Hey, hey, hey. Happy Wednesday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, interestingly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard, everyone. Tonight is Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. This is live show 1316. If you are not overly familiar with the show, let me point out it's super casual around here. Just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop role-playing game news. And then I will normally pontificate about a topic related to our hobby, which I am doing tonight. In fact, we're going to talk about how you can, or other people, gamers out there can, cut their dungeon master / game master a break. And it's simply by being a better player at the game table. And we're going to talk about that in just a little while. But of course, that's going to be coming after we tackle the news. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And then, of course, because this is a live stream, there is chat available. Now, you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least 60 minutes. Yep, a whole hour before you can take part in chat. But if you check off that box and you want to say howdy, maybe get a question, a comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my absolute best to respond. First out the gate tonight is Semper Buffo. Danny Gable's with us, as is the Madman, Cthulhu, Mark Edwards, Michael Berry, Kathy Evans has also popped on in, and we might have the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D. lurking in the shadows as another of our chat moderators alongside the Madman. We shall find out. So welcome aboard, everybody. Let's dive on into the news, because I've got quite a bit of it tonight, because Modiphius Entertainment has now begun taking pre-orders for the latest supplement for Star Trek Adventures. And I've got the latest on allies and adversaries. For 60 years, Star Trek has presented hundreds of beings and creatures as friends, foes, or challenges for main and supporting characters. The sheer variety of life forms is an example of infinite diversity in infinite combinations, and plays a key role in Star Trek storytelling themes. The Allies and Adversary source book enables Star Trek Adventures game masters to learn more about beings present in the Star Trek galaxy and bring them to life in missions and campaigns. Use this supplement to create, modify, and use interesting and cunning allies. I've got a cunning ally, me lord. And adversaries. So I guess it's also a cunning adversary. And collaboratively tell dramatic and engaging stories with your players in your very own Star Trek style episode or ongoing series. The 128-page full-color hardcover Allies and Adversaries sourcebook features guidance on NPCs and their uses, expanding on the content found in the core rulebook, as well as advice on using NPCs as allies, including ideas on balancing conflicts and encounters to give your crew challenging and satisfying experiences. You'll find information on many factions, including the Borg Collective, the Breen, the Cardassian Union, the Dominion, the Gorn Hegemony, the Orion Syndicate, the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Star Empire, the Tholians, and much more. There's game statistics for dozens of minor, notable, and major NPCs among the various species and factions covered in this source book. You'll find game statistics for a selection of creatures found throughout the Star Trek galaxy, as well as rules and guidance on how to create your own original characters for use in your missions and campaigns. This second edition supplement is compatible with both first edition Star Trek Adventures and the Captain's Log Solo RPG. Right now, you can pre-order the 128-page hardcover with PDF for $55.04 to the exchange rates. I'm going to guess the MSRP is probably going to land at $54.99. The physical book is expected in July, leading me to believe it might be a Gen Con premiere. The PDF is going to be available in May, probably around the middle of May, for those who pre-order. Very nice. Always cool to see new Star Trek Adventures releases pop up. So, W4 asks, why do I feel this book could have been folded into their recent Species source book? That's a good question there, W Forge. Welcome aboard, by the way. I think lately aren't the Star Trek Adventures volumes coming out at about 128 pages? Sadly enough. I mean, 128 pages is fine. When you start charging $55 for 128 pages, start to get a little uncomfortable with that pricing. But, everything's more expensive these days everywhere. Mark Hawkswell and Kevin King are with us in chat. Semper Buffo says, love that Modiphius continues to support the game with quality publications. And every once in a while, you will see the PDF adventures pop up. They tend to be just single missions for like $4.99 usually. So I always like to see that. It's kind of cool. Kind of cool. I wish I had an opportunity to check out the second edition of Star Trek Adventures. Never did. Moving right along, the Chaosium Inc. 50th anniversary slipcase set for Call of Cthulhu, that is a mouthful, is now available. It is in stores, and I've got the lowdown. The complete Call of Cthulhu experience is now available in a special Chaosium Inc. 50th anniversary collectible slipcase set. What's inside? The Keeper Rulebook, Investigator Handbook, and Keeper Screen Pack, together in a premium collector's slipcase with all new cover art, celebrating the 50th anniversary of Chaosium. Playing the role of a steadfast investigator, you travel to strange and dangerous places, uncover foul plots, and stand against the terrors of the Cthulhu mythos. You encounter sanity-blasting entities, monsters, and insane cultists. Within strange and forgotten tomes of lore, you discover revelations that humanity was not meant to know. The Keeper Rulebook contains the core rules, background, guidance, spells, and monsters of the game. It's everything you need for Call of Cthulhu at your fingertips, and will, of course, enhance all of your games. The Keeper Rulebook is intended for use by the Keeper of Arcane Lore, the game master who will present the scenarios to the other players. The Keeper Rulebook is a veritable grimoire of rules and inspiration to make your Call of Cthulhu games the absolute best they can be. Within, you'll find a bestiary of mythos entities to pepper your Call of Cthulhu scenarios and campaigns, 2 complete scenarios, handouts, and pre-generated characters, full rules for the sanity system that sets Call of Cthulhu apart from other horror games, and much more. The Investigator Handbook contains expanded rules for creating player characters, a wealth of over 100 occupations and skill descriptions, as well as guidance on getting the most from the game. It introduces a range of organizations for your investigator to belong to, detailed information about the classic 1920s setting, and advice for all budding and experienced players alike. Within, you'll find full rules for creating unique characters for Call of Cthulhu, a chapter on advice for both role-playing and Call of Cthulhu in general will benefit new and returning players, as well as a primer on 1920s New England, the signature setting of Call of Cthulhu, and much more. The Keeper's Screen Pack enhances your games of Call of Cthulhu with scenarios, reference tables, and maps that increase the flow of play and help to immerse you in the horror of the mythos. Inside, you'll find 2 ready-to-play scenarios, each set in 1920s New England, a set of large full-color maps featuring the world, Lovecraft Country, and the city of Arkham itself, and of course, a 34-inch Keeper screen, evocative artwork facing the players, while the rear of the screen summarizes important mechanics, statistics, and charts. As I mentioned, this slipcase set is available now. I do believe it includes all applicable PDFs, too. It carries an MSRP of $139.99, and I have to say thank you very kindly to my friends over at Chaosium Inc. because they were kind enough to send along a copy of the Chaosium 50th Anniversary Call of Cthulhu slipcase set as a way of showing their appreciation of all the work I put in doing what I do. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Really doesn't hurt that Call of Cthulhu is my favorite role-playing game to run. Gotta say, we got some cool artwork. I will also say, if you already have the Investigator's Guide, the Keeper book, the Keeper screen and such, only thing that's different from the standard 7th edition is the cover artwork. To my knowledge, it is all the same content. So this is meant to be a collector's item. Now, of course, obviously you can use it for your gaming if this is the only purchase you make for the core rules and stuff. But it is not like this is some special edition of the books. Just letting you know. But still, very, very cool. 50th anniversary of Chaosium, which was actually last year. It took them a little while to get these. So, very sweet. Very, very nice. All right, we got some new folks popping on into chat. Let's see. Higzilla's with us. J-Man, the Eclectic Goat, said, found this completely by accident tonight. Interestingly, they've been struggling all day with the issue of players who won't get off their phone and aren't engaging. I do believe the Eclectic Goat has their own channel. Am I right? Regardless, welcome aboard. I have, I think it's over on Blue Sky that I have seen you. There you go. Somebody got the name right on the first try. Yeah, I'm used to seeing the word eclectic. Said, welcome aboard. Exila's like, but wait, there's more. Wasn't that enough in the slipcase set? And we have Mrs. and oh no, Mr. Sandman. Took me a second. I was like, wait, Mr. Sandman's with us, as is Little Britain. So the Eclectic Goat says, yes, they do have a channel. It's mostly tiny indie games no one's ever heard of. I do that with some role-playing games. I used to do that a lot when I tackled more board games. I was, gosh, for the longest time, I think it was myself. Well, I shouldn't say myself. It was Elliot and the rest of the contributors we've had over the years. And I want to say it was Fortress of Ameritrash were the only two outlets that would give Victory Point Games the time of day. They did good stuff. Granted, it was just in the little Ziploc bags to start off with. But still. Alrighty then, moving right along. It's Traveler Week, so allow me to bring you yet another money-saving offer on the venerable science fiction role-playing game Traveler by way of Mongoose Publishing and Bundle of Holding. Attention, Traveler! This all-new Traveler Imperial Navy bundle presents PDF, source books, and adventures that tour the Third Imperium space fleet in Traveler, the tabletop science fiction role-playing game from Mongoose Publishing. The strongest military force in charted space, the Imperial Navy is entwined in the politics and economics of the Imperium Galactic Empire. The Navy is a training ground for the great nobility and for the general populace, a route to social advancement. Without its senior service, the Third Imperium would not exist. Now you can command the bridge crew of a giant capital ship in everything from shakedown cruises and show the flag missions to momentous military engagements that protect whole planets. This all-new Imperial Navy offer, along with its companion revival in progress, the Mongoose Traveler Update Bundle, which I talked about yesterday, kick off this year's Traveler Week, a new sequence of 5 Bundle of Holding offers showcasing Mongoose Traveler 2nd Edition. These offers mark Traveler Day, celebrated each year on May 1st in recognition of the cover copy on the 1977 first edition of Traveler. This is Free Trader Beowulf calling anyone. Mayday, Mayday. Yeah, I keep changing up the voice. I'll do a different one tomorrow. Look for more revivals later this week. For just $14.95, you'll get all 6 titles in this Imperial Navy collection, which has a retail value of $115 as DRM-free PDFs, including the complete Imperial Navy source book, the Element-class cruisers, Shipbuilder's Blueprints, with its Naval Campaign source book, and all 4 naval adventures, Shakedown Cruise, Showing the Sunburst, Fire on the Sindalian Main, an Enemy of My Enemy. These savings run through May 18th. And once again, gotta point out, you are saving some big bucks, bigger bucks with these Traveler bundles of holding than you normally will see on Bundle of Holding. So I'll give you an example, right? So it's $14.95. You get the 6 PDFs. One of those PDFs is the Imperial Navy source book for Traveler, which in PDF is $29.99. So you can get that plus 5 more PDFs for a little bit less than half of what you would pay for just one of the PDFs. So there you go. There you go. I know a lot of people talk about, they love to check out Traveler. They see the pricing even on the PDFs and they're kind of scared off by that. This is the time to strike. That's why I share whenever I run across role-playing game bundles out there, be it Bundle of Holding, Humble Bundle, and Fanatical. As long as they're not products that use AI, I will get that news out in front of you to help save you money in your gaming. The Eclectic Goat says Mark Miller was on their show a few weeks ago with Scott Robinson and Jeff D. I've met Jeff D. I've said hello to Mark Miller at Gamehole Con, but I didn't really. He was kind of busy. I didn't want to, monopolize any of his time. Highlight of the Eclectic Goat's life. I used to chat with Frank Chadwick quite often at the Consim World Expo out in Tempe when I lived in Arizona. He was doing stuff for Victory Point Games, and I was really tight with the gang from Victory Point Games. But yeah, he was always very cool. One of the big GDW names out there. So the Eclectic Goat says, well, except the Robert Schwalb interview, but no one knows I play his stuff. Really? It's was something Didn't go right with the interview with Robert Schwalb talking Shadow of the Demon Lord or Shadow of the Weird Wizard. I share news mainly about Weird Wizard, not necessarily Demon Lord, but still. All right, moving right along. A campaign setting guide is landed in print for the Mazes role-playing game, and I've got the scoop on City of Skull from Ninth Level Games. The Witch Kings destroyed everything. Now we live in a world of perpetual eclipse in the last city alive on a sea of dust and sand called the Great Salt Waste. Without magic and treasure uncovered from the ruins and mazes scattered across the waste, even the great city of Skull will soon fall to the sleeping god's hunger. Explore Skull, the last city. City of Skull is an in-depth exploration of the world of mazes. Learn about the religion, politics, guilds, races, and tattered history left after the apocalypse. Into the Salt Waste. Create adventure guilds and venturers to explore the uncharted wilderness. Delve into ancient ruins to find lost technology and powerful magics to bring back glory, gold, and to feed the sleeping god. Walk the burning parade. At night, the uneasy dead rise again, contaminated by blight and pain. They stalk the city, devastating all with the misfortune of being caught in their path. Join the burning parade to keep the skull safe, or maybe just to earn your coin. City of Skull includes new hazards and monsters, new rules for hex crawling and campaign stories, advancement rules for mazes, new character classes, and new character lineages. It's got a West Marches style gameplay, as well as OSR style random treasure and magic item generation. Mazes is a return to the classic sword and sorcery dungeon crawler with award-winning yet delightfully simple modern rules. The first tabletop role-playing game to use the polymorph system, Mazes is easy to learn and teach and ready to play without a lot of prep. Designed for episodic play, Mazes is ideal for one-shots and conventions. It's a distillation and modernization of the classic dungeon delve, making it a perfect introduction for those new to role-playing, as well as a great excuse for grognards to get back into the dungeon. This 224-page A5 size hardcover, I do believe it's A5 size. I think it's 6 inches by 9 inches. Might not be exactly A5, but it's kind of zine-ish sized. But it is hardcover. Carries an MSRP of $39.99. I do not know if that includes the PDF. There was no indication over at the Ninth Level website that it did. But speaking of the PDF, if you're interested in just picking that up, you can do so for $19.99. Sweet. I may have reviewed Mazes back in the day. Maybe you even caught that review. It's pretty cool. I liked it. The polymorph system is very easy to jump into, and every class has their particular die that they use. So that is kind of an interesting little wrinkle. So some of the big things that this is bringing to the game, not just the setting, is the advancement rules, because Mazes originally has no character advancement. The only real character advancement that takes place is maybe getting better magic items and stuff like that. So that is absolutely new with this. And of course, we also get the kind of hex crawl. I thought that was pretty cool. Very nice. Very nice. There are actually a few print items that are hitting stores this week for Mazes, this being one of them. On to our next news piece, the Into the Wild Omnibus Edition for Old School Essentials and other OSR role-playing games is now out in print and PDF for Third Kingdom Games. And here's what I know. This 380-page book combines 3 volumes into one: a guide to thieves' guilds, filling in the blanks, and Into the Wild, all geared towards aiding referees and characters in venturing out into the wilderness and high-level domain activities. A Guide to Thieves' Guilds provides guidance on forming and running guilds, both for the PC interested in establishing a guild and for the referee wanting to add guilds to their campaign. Filling in the Blanks provides numerous tables and charts that help referees flesh out hexes for use in hex crawl and sandbox campaigns. Into the Wild includes guidance for running hex crawl campaigns, a random weather generator, rules for establishing and running domains, an abstracted mass combat system, rules for mercantile trading, guidelines for creating BX-style character classes, and some alternate classes for BX games that add a little bit of flair to the originals. The 380-page hardcover with PDF can be had over at DriveThruRPG for $70.95. If you want to grab just the PDF, you can do so for $25.95. I will mention the pricing layout is kind of odd because there's also a soft cover that shows that it's $69.95. And there's also another hardcover that is $69.95. So I'm not real sure what exactly is going on, although it does say that if you want the hardcover that's got the velvet bookmark, select the retail edition, which I think, if I remember right, is $69.95. But if you are not remembering who Third Kingdom Games is, they are the fine folks behind the Populated Hexes monthly zines that come out for Old School Essentials. Very cool. The Eclectic Goat says the interview with Robert Schwalb actually went great. Just people aren't very familiar with his work. He was an awesome guest. Very nice. It's kind of weird that people aren't, well, all depends on who your audience is, I guess. Because I would think a good number of people, at least especially those hanging out in chat, would know Robert Schwalb's work, not only from Schwalb Entertainment, but also his work on Dungeons and Dragons. I would think. Don't know. All righty. So that is it for the news tonight. Of course, I've mentioned DriveThruRPG a few times. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you're going to visit, say, I don't know, DriveThruRPG, Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, Wargame Vault, any of the numerous One Bookshelf sites, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a 5% commission. And all those commissions really do add up and help keep the gaminggang.com website around. If you are enjoying the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Give it a little bit of hype if you got hype points and you're on a mobile device. Don't be afraid to give it the thumbs up or heart or what is it? Is it like a bouquet of flowers? You know what I'm the little things if you're hanging out in chat. Help show engagement. Boomerman Dan Webb has joined us. Welcome aboard. I think I've said hello to everybody who's with us in chat so far, or at least who's chimed in chat. You know me. I always try to say hello to everybody as they pop on in. Anyway, if you enjoy the Gaming Gang, feel that this is a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, there are a couple of other ways that you can support the outlet. First, by utilizing PayPal for a one-time donation. Buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. simply lovely. And of course, we also have our Patreon. You can become a monthly member of our Patreon. And I always like to give a quick shout out to our Patreon members during the live streams. So a tip of the cap to Ben Oathwaite, Caval, Kevin R. Smith, Talzek, Sean O'Donnell, Herman Lutman, Gustavo Cavalho, Kevin King, GameCat, RPG Munch, Tier 2 DM, Far Drift, Pete Strakulich, Dan Webb, Tessie Trekkie, Agile Monk, The Madman, and Flint's Fireforge. Thank you all very, very kindly. Of course, you will find links down in the show notes. Also, down in those show notes, you'll find an invite link to our Discord server. Absolutely free to sign up. So why not come hang with the gang over on Discord? There is also a special members only area for the Patreon members too. So we've got that going for it. Also, nice. Anywho. So that's the news. Tonight, we are going to talk about how players can cut their dungeon masters and game masters a break by simply being better players at the game table. And you're going to find some of the items I'm going to mention are pretty common sense. Not like anybody's got to go way out of their way to do any of this. Maybe, invest a little energy in a couple of them. But we're going to talk about that because we actually have somebody hanging out in chat right now who said, hey, they're having a really hard time with their players and their goddamn phones. I threw the goddamn part in. That's how I keep the kids away, right? That's not a kid. That show's not for kids. I know they're talking about games and everything, but the guy said, goddamn. The guy says worse things. So, anywho, so that is going to be our topic tonight, and we're going to get into tonight's topic in just a few moments. But first, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
Here are 6 safety hints to keep in mind whenever you drive. Fasten your seatbelts before you start. Check your brakes. Make sure your brake lights, turn signals, and headlights are working properly. Maintain 1 car interval for each 10 miles of speed. Avoid panic stops. Drive within the posted speed limits.
It's intermission time. Time to pause and refresh at the snack bar. During this short break, you can treat your taste to good food and sparkling cold beverages, including delicious Coca-Cola. If you're hot dog hungry, we have them. Sizzling, juicy hot dogs served in warm, oven-fresh buns, plus a complete menu of all your favorites. Visit the Refreshment Center now. Enjoy delicious food and ice-cold Coca-Cola.
Kodak movie camera says, take me with you, always.
All America is Cameraland, and it's yours just for the picture taking.
So why not take your pictures the modern way? And the name Kodak means it's the finest you can give.
And with these new cameras by Kodak, you'll find that movies are just as easy to take as snapshots.
So for your next gift, choose the one that says, take me with you, always.
I have Dugan's bread and another kind. I want the cheap stuff. Cheap, cheap, cheap. That other bread is for the birds.
It's the car of a lifetime. It took him all year to build it.
Hell, I'm gonna drive that thing right up to General Motors' front door.
One night to lose it.
Hey, that's my car! You stole my car!
And the whole summer to get it back. MGM presents Corvette Summer.
Somebody stole my Stingray. The word's out, it's in Vegas.
You got a Corvette?
Starring Mark Hamill, who's back from Star Wars.
Oh, yeah!
And Annie Potts, who's out of this world.
You're gonna spend the night. Comprende, amigo?
If he knew as much about girls as he does about cars, he wouldn't be so nervous.
Peel off them duds, sailor, and let me see what you got.
Sure.
And if she knew as much about cars as she does about boys,
What do you drink?
she wouldn't be so jealous.
Motor oil?
And if you knew as much as they know about this candy apple metal flake Corvette, you'd be chasing it too.
I'm helping you, dope. I'm helping you find your car.
You run up against a car thief, you're liable to wind up at the bottom of Lake Mead.
He's into fast cars.
Why don't you write a letter to the car? Dear car.
She's into black velvet.
Beg your pardon?
Wow!
Together, they find love,
You have no right to take me anywhere!
excitement, and danger. On the trail of a stolen Corvette.
Stop this car! Stop it! I'm getting out!
Oh, no, you're not.
Mark Hamill, Annie Potts. It's the girl,
Oh, you're insane!
the car, and the time that separates the men from the boys. Corvette Summer,
It's a terrific car.
a fiberglass romance.
Wow, that jumped back pretty quick. Hang on one second. Brought up the wrong screen. Funny enough, I just watched Corvette Summer about 6 months ago. Forget how I stumbled across it, too. I think it was on like a free streamer, or maybe even it was on YouTube. And I was like, hey, I haven't seen that in years. Like, it was an all right movie. I thought it was okay. So let's see. Kevin R. Smith has joined us in chat. So has the Tabletop Scholar and Tim Johnson. So a welcome to you all. Kevin R. Smith says they're kind of shocked to see she's mentioned by name. Well, she's like the second lead. She's got almost as, well, okay, she doesn't have almost as much screen time as Mark Hamill. But she's got a lot of screen time. So, yeah. And I think it may have been her first lead role. There's something I thought was kind of funny I've seen. It's an old Johnny Carson clip. And Annie Potts is the guest. And sitting next to her is Shelley Winters. And Shelley Winters says something about, oh, you look so familiar. I've seen you in movies. And you're very, very good. Trying to remember what movie I've seen you in. And Annie Potts says, maybe the one that we were in together. Like, ooh, ouch. Yeah. All right. So tonight, our topic is cutting your dungeon master / game master a break simply by being a better player at the table. And there are a few things that really stand out as far as gamers and role-playing games, at least nowadays, that I see. I also hear from people all the time. And as a game master, as a forever game master, which many of you I know out there watching both live and later on Memorex happen to be, it can be rather frustrating because it's normally with players who have never GM'd or DM'd, so they don't realize what goes into it. I don't know where the idea that it's just like, oh, sure, this just magically pops into my brain. Now, I'm not talking about the emergent play aspect. I'm just talking about, the rules and everything else. And then, of course, if you're running a published adventure, which many people do, in fact, I know for a fact there are people out there who claim that they never run a published adventure who do run published adventures. They just are like me. They never run it as written. They always kind of knock a few things around in it. But the first thing a gamer needs to do to be a better tabletop role-playing game player is be ready to play when you hit the table. When you sit down to play, be ready to play. And the reason why I mention that is because, when I was younger, much younger, as Kevin King says, should subtitle this episode, Things That Will Never Happen. Kevin R. Smith said they just checked Wikipedia. Corvette Summer was Annie Potts' first film role. Nice. Very cool. So Little Britain points out, even running a published adventure takes significantly more effort than playing in one. Oh, yeah. I'm not trying to, imbibe that it's not, that there's no effort involved. No, of course. For one, you have to read it. You have to invest the time and energy into reading it. And then probably piecing things together, especially if it's an adventure that some things are very good, other things are like, I don't think I need that. So anyway, Pete Stracklich, who I don't think I said hello to. Good to see you, Pete Stracklich. Also points out it would help if players remember what actually happened last session. Yes, that's part of this too. Anyway, but I'll see this where, what I was going to say, when I was younger and we got together to play multiple times a week, then this wasn't really an issue. It didn't matter that we spent, 20 minutes talking about what's been going on before we got into the game, because we were sitting there and, playing 3 times a week. Nowadays, that's not the case. And nowadays, most people are lucky if their game session is going to be 3 hours start to finish. I try to go a little bit longer than that, but there are times where we're not able to pull that off either. And even if you're playing as many sessions as, as often, I guess I should say, as once a week, 20 minutes of catching up and just shooting the shit around the table while the game master is ready to rock and roll is frustrating for the GM. So, if you want to sit there and see how everybody's doing as you're getting your snacks and you're settling in, of course. But once it's time to start playing, it's time to be ready to play. Something else is pay attention while you're sitting at the table playing. And this falls into the sitting there surfing, doom scrolling on your phone. If it's, not your turn in combat, or just sitting there, you're bored. Nothing too exciting is going on, at least for your character. And you're just sitting there kind of, flipping on through, texting people. No, not at all. And once again, this kind of boils down to these people have never had to go through the effort of game mastering. So they don't realize that their dungeon master, their game master had to invest time and energy, even if they're just no prep gaming, they still had to figure out the rules to the game at some point. So they have invested time and energy into trying to provide a fun, entertaining evening that everyone's going to take part in and everybody's going to enjoy. And you're disrespecting them by sitting there just scrolling through your phone. So my policy is you can have a phone at the table. It's got to be on vibrate. And, you know, if we're taking a break, if we're taking 5, by all means, feel free. If you want to sit there and you want to look something up, because, of course, I'm running Call of Cthulhu, so people are kind of like, really? You couldn't call the police from your house in the 1920s? And it's like, no, you couldn't. You had to go find a police box or find someone, a cop who was walking the beat. You couldn't, there was no 911 to dial. Really? And they'll look at him, they're like, oh, wow, you're right. I'm like, yeah. So something like that, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have like draconian terms as far as my players sitting at my table. But I want them to focus on playing the game. And some of that also falls onto the game master to make sure that everybody around the table is getting a little bit of the limelight for their characters to shine, and don't be focusing on just what's going on with another character and their backstory. We'll get the backstories in a minute. But to make sure that everybody feels like they're involved. And yes, I understand that there are some players out there who are far more outgoing and bombastic, and they like to role play. And then you have other players who are kind of quiet, kind of sit back a little bit. You got to kind of drag them into things a bit. I understand we've got people like that. But still, it is kind of a juggling act as a game master in many, many respects. And one of those ways is trying to make sure that everybody feels like they're involved with what's going on. Even if you're just looking at that person while you're talking about what's going on, what I try to make sure I do, I kind of, scan around back and forth. I don't just look at one person while I'm talking about, okay, and then you guys open up the door to the haunted house, and no, not at all. But it's important for players to at least try to pay attention while they're at the game table. These are just super simple, common sense, common courtesy sorts of things that are going to make your game master's life easier, because they're not sitting there having to wrangle cats. They're not going to feel like they're shoveling fleas across a barnyard, as Abraham Lincoln used to say. So before we move on to some other ideas, let's see what's going on in chat here. Dan Webb says, game time, damn it. Yeah, there are times where I have to say, hey, okay, we only have so much time. And if you follow the Gaming Gang, if you watch from time to time, my best friend Elliot is not often available to play. So when he's got a chance to show up to play, we want to play, not fill Elliot in on all the new comics and stuff you've picked up. He doesn't really care. I mean, he's, nice enough where he doesn't sit there and go, hey, I don't really care about this. But still, it's sort of like, hey, you know what? We only have so much time to get together. I do not necessarily want this adventure to be lasting 8 months. So, can we get going here? All right. Kevin R. Smith says, one tip I've often heard is tell everybody to be there half an hour before you actually want to start. to build time for socializing. Yes. Sadly, it's easier said than done because a lot of times people only have like 4 hours from the moment they hit your doorstep on the way in to the time they're on the way out. Little Britain says in one game, they have two very chatty players who ADHD can't be stopped in midstream, and two very quiet players who I keep having to make talking space for. Yeah, you gotta make do with the players you got. I'll be the first to point out, and this may not necessarily be, a popular view here, but I've said this before. As a game master, you should never feel like you're obligated to run games for people. If it's going to turn into just being one big fucking hassle, I'd rather just stay home. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, especially if you're not running the game at your place, you got to go to someone else's house. Like for me, it's an hour back and forth. So if I'm going over there and it's going to end up being like an hour and a half that we play, I'd rather just stay home. We've talked about that where it's sort of like players aren't doing the game master or dungeon master a favor by showing up to play. It isn't as if any DM, GM out there doesn't have other things they could be doing to keep themselves entertained. Am I right? The Eclectic Goat says, if it's not your turn, you're scrolling. You're not going to be ready when it is your turn, right? Because people are going to be like, wait, what's going on? What do you mean, what's going on? Are you not sitting at this table? I'll call people out for bad behavior. I will. And not necessarily if I were like playing in somebody else's game. I wouldn't necessarily do that. But if I'm the game master, yeah. If I'm the keeper, I'm running Call of Cthulhu, and we're getting to kind of a spooky, creepy part, and somebody's dicking around. Nope. Nip that in the bud. Man says they send out a recap of the previous session to their players, so you don't need to go over it and delay starting the game. What I will normally do is, since, once again, I'm 99% of the time running Call of Cthulhu, there is somebody who takes notes. And in this group, currently, it's my nephew, Cameron. So I'll ask Cameron when we're usually kind of getting snacks and pouring sodas and stuff like that. I'll say, hey, Cameron, give us a recap. And he'll be like, oh, well, this happened, that happened, this happened. I'm like, is that it? And he's like, no, there's something. I'm like, so then I'll like help him out. I'll go, okay, what about, oh, okay, 5 minutes and we're good to go. But yes, the whole, so wait, what's going on now? Where are we? Oh, you're in that haunted house. What haunted house? The haunted house that you went into and spent an hour of game time in last time we played. That haunted house? I don't recall that. Kevin R. Smith says the worst in one group where they were a player was the person who was playing the MMO on their laptop while the game was going on. Oh, man. Oh, to have seen that. Crazy. Little Britain says what they do is they give them a few seconds to state what they're doing on their turn. They aren't ready. I put them in the bottom of the initiative and move on. I'll do that too. More so when it's like, okay, so what are you going to do? And it's like, like, all right, you only got a few seconds here to decide. And then if they can't come up with something, I'm like, well, We'll come back to you. And then all the monsters, everything, they get to take their turns at them. So the eclectic goat says they do the same, but the worst offender is their husband, and I'm a sucker in love. Crack that whip. So the man says, you mean wives play role-playing games? Clearly mine doesn't. Kevin King says, yeah, their wife has a bit of ADHD. She's the worst offender at his table. Yeah, well, your hands are kind of tied in those situations there. Tabletop Scholars rock it out. Catch you later. Little Britain says, if it's anxiety that's different, even so, they might say, okay, no problem. You can come up with something while we move on. Agile Monk is popping on into chat. Good to see you once again. Good friend of the show. Good friend of the outlet. Anyway, so when you sit down at the table, be ready to play. Pay attention to the game that's going on while you're at the table. Those are a couple of tips. We're kind of discussing some of those things as well. If someone has like anxiety issues, I would do my best to, because, normally as a game master, you're trying to, pump up the action, right? I would probably tune that down, right? If I'm dealing with somebody who might have some anxiety issues, some societal issues. So, House of Toa is with us. Popping on in. Welcome aboard. I guess they are a lurker. So thanks for joining us in chat. Next tip. Now, remember, I'm talking to players out there. I'm not necessarily talking to game masters that this is what you need to make your players do. I'm saying as a player, these are things you should be doing at the game table to make your dungeon master or game master's life easier. And the next is have a little bit of an understanding how the game rules work. Now, I don't expect you to sit down and be like, okay, grappling rules? Yeah, I know all about grappling. It's an inside joke around here. But it is very helpful if you understand what the core mechanic of the game is. Rolling a 20-sided die. High is good, low is bad. Rolling percentile dice. Rolling under the stated number for your skill or attribute or sanity, whatever. Good. Rolling higher, bad. Give you a great example. This is from my own game table. This is the last time we played Call of Cthulhu. I think it was. Now, keep in mind, we're just about to begin the third chapter of A Time to Harvest. So this will be the 5th session for this adventure campaign. And sadly, one of our sessions was an hour and a half because somebody couldn't stay awake. It wasn't because of the game. It was because they hadn't gotten any sleep. And I was like, you know what? Okay. Not a huge deal. Elliot's not hanging with us tonight, so that's fine. But yeah, because as a game master, it's not all that fun to be talking about what's going on and have somebody at the table like this. I don't know. That just doesn't get my juices flowing for the game. So we're getting ready to start. I said it may have been Cameron. It may have been my brother. They were making a skill roll, and they said, roll higher, roll high. And I'm like, no, under. And then not 2 minutes later, somebody else, I think it was Cameron, had to roll, and they were like, so I'm rolling high, right? And it's like, no, under, equal to or under. And remember, this was like the 4th session of Call of Cthulhu, and they had played a little bit of Call of Cthulhu before that. So it wasn't like they were completely oblivious to what this game was. So yes, it is very helpful for the game master if, even as a player, if you simply know what dice you need to use doing certain things. So you're playing D&D, playing RuneQuest, Pathfinder, whatever. Know what dice you need to roll. Like, okay, we're in combat now. All right. So I know we're playing Pathfinder. I got a 20-sided die. I want to roll high on that die. And with my short sword, I do 1d6 plus 2 damage. So I know I got my 6-sided die handy. As opposed to every round of combat being sitting there going, I roll this die? Jeff, what's wrong? Ooh, I'm short-circuiting. Hey, so I've got something that's kind of being referenced a little bit is my next tip. And that is support the group at the table. As a player, allow the other players to shine. In most role-playing games, the party concept is designed so that each of the players has a role to play. So their character is good at a certain thing, and then another character is good at another thing, and so on and so forth. So when you have 4 or 5 people playing these various different characters, everybody gets a shot at doing something that feels meaningful, hopefully, during a game session. And hopefully it's more than one time. But, you know, it's like, oh, okay, we gotta break that chest open. All right, well, get muscles over here. Oh, there's a trap. All right. Well, get Trixie over here. Don't sit at the table just waiting to pounce. Oh, I'm doing this. Now, of course, as a player, you know, be like, oh, okay, so I think my character would do this, or my character is going to do this. Or discuss with the other players, hey, you know, you should be doing this. Not telling them what to do, but if they haven't, oh yeah, that's right. I'm the one who disarms the traps. I'm the thief. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, right. I'm going to disarm that trap. Those kind of things, yes. But I see it, not necessarily with my group, but I have seen it and I hear about it where you'll have a group where there's one player who wants their character to be the star of the show, guest starring everybody else at the table, or that there's someone who sits there and tells other people how they should run their characters. That ain't any fun either. All right, back to chat. Let's see what we got cooking here. Little Britain says, old school tip they use, go around the table asking players for their intention even before initiative is rolled. There are some modern games that do that too. I actually like games that make the players determine what their intent is before getting into the round. Because then it's like, yeah, shit, I'm going last. And I said I'm doing this. Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to work. I'm gonna have to work with that. I dig that. I like that. as opposed to, oh, well, I was going to do this. Now I'm going to do this. Kevin R. Smith says, but it gets really fun when you're playing genuine old school D&D. People have a really hard time with the concept of having a caller at the table, which I don't require. And these days, the mapper. As someone who didn't play a ton of Dungeons and Dragons back in the day, I don't think we ever had anybody who was kind of our go-to mapper. But that is a lost art, I think, for many people. But yes, the whole, you have the caller tells everybody what's going on, or well, basically the caller tells the game master what the group is doing until it comes down to a situation where individual decisions have to be made. The Eclectic Goat says, as a player, if the game is running, I'm obsessively focused. I've been known to terrify GMs. Never made one cry, but that's kind of interesting. I don't mind people being like really into the game. We tend to kind of joke around probably a little bit more than some game tables, and probably a little bit less than other game tables. So things tend to be pretty light. Although my players, more Elliot than anybody else, Cameron kind of does, kind of gets into their character. The Eclectic Goat says, hang on. Go back to Little Britain. Says, if they want to change it, they're automatically delayed to later in the initiative. The Eclectic Goat says, I did that once. My brother was running and I felt terrible. I didn't realize, this is the intensity. I didn't realize how tired I was until about an hour into the game. Oh, the falling asleep thing. Yeah. Pete Stracklich says, I need a nice way to tell a player that the game might not be for them. They don't take it seriously and cause the group their lives. And Pete Stracklich is very serious about his game. And death comes to all. Death comes to all who play with Pete Stracklich. Maybe not all at the same time. I think I just need to include him with more experienced players. That is a possibility. All depends. Is it a player that you think that'll rub off on? Because, I mean, you can take some players and put them with a really good group, and they're just, they bring the group down as opposed to be like, oh, okay, I get it. This is how you do it. The Eclectic Goat asks, has anyone ever played Knight in Avalon that requires declaring before rolling? An amazing system. I shared a review for Knight way back in the day. Little Britain says they were the mapper when they played. Danny Gable says, I love mapping. Only time mapping sucks, it's when you're like in caverns and stuff, and it's like, I'll tell you one thing, though. Nothing worse than a game master is going to sit there and correct your map. It's like, doesn't really matter that much. It doesn't matter that much. You just need to have an idea of where they're going to get back out. It says, Jeff knows. Death comes for all. In, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Stennet, something like that is the town, is the setting. So as far as telling somebody the game is not for them, I would think, depending on how well you know this person, I think it would probably be easier. This sounds like this would be the plot for like a 22-minute sitcom on ABC on Friday nights. Do they still have like the kids kind comedies on Friday nights. I don't know. I don't really watch network TV. So anyway, I would think if you talk to them and you help put it into their head that it's their idea to quit, it's probably going to work out better. So I would say, you know, approach them and ask them, you know, what do they think of the game? And I think Pete Stracklich was mentioning that they don't take it seriously enough. Ask them if they think that the game is too serious. And if they start saying, yeah, you know, well, blah, 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 XYZ, then you can say, well, you got to realize that's how this game is supposed to be. And once again, you're kind of giving them a little idea. Well, maybe this game isn't for me then. Because I like to joke and juggle at the table. I like to make fart noises and juggle. So that's what I would try to do. And if they don't click on that, I would say, you know, I don't know. Do you think this game is for you? I kind of get the feeling that you're not enjoying it the same as everybody else at the table. And they might just say, hey, yeah, I'm having a blast. And you're like, okay, I guess so. So the Eclectic Goat is providing some advice as well. Danny Gable says they had a player who needed to talk, but they were self-aware enough that they did quit. As Pete Stracklich says, the life of a DM, we have many challenges. We certainly do. And this is one of the reasons why we've got this topic tonight, because we've talked about this before, far too many players out there just think that anybody can be a game master. Anybody can be like, oh, yes, I'm going to pick up the 3 core books for Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm a dungeon master now. Now I'm a great dungeon master. No. That tain't true, Dooley. It takes some work. Now, there are people who are naturals, but the naturals didn't just crack open a book and suddenly like, wow, ta-da. Takes a little bit of work, takes some experience. Some people will never be good game masters. Other people, it comes naturally to them. It's more about how well you can tell a story, how you can draw people in. More than anything else, in my opinion. It's not how well do you remember all the rules to various different mechanics. To me, that's got very little to do with being a really good game master. So, and I never claimed to be a really good game master. My players enjoy it. I have people tell me, hey, we had a lot of fun. And they're not like blowing smoke. So I'm like, oh, okay. So Joe Monk says, what? Anybody can be a dungeon master. Say it ain't so. It's not. It's not so. It's like being a bartender, which I spent 12 years doing. We could be the only psychologists some guys have. Too much responsibility. You know, it's funny. I used to sit there and talk to Wayne Gretzky. He'd be the only guy at the bar some nights out in Arizona. Because if you're new to the show, for about 12 years, I was a bartender out in Arizona, but I worked at like the big money resorts and that. And at the time, Gretzky was a part owner of the Phoenix Coyotes, who are now what? Were the Utah Mammoth? Better name than the Utah Hockey Club. Anyway, but he didn't have a house in Phoenix. So he would fly in to the small Scottsdale airport that was a mile from the resort I worked at. And that's where he would stay. We had other teams from out of town would stay there too. And it was so funny because he would stay at the hotel and then come midnight, I was the only bar that was open, and he would He would be hanging out there. Just him and I, we'd be talking hockey. And of course, he knew I was a Blackhawks fan. But yeah, he was a very nice guy. I've told another story about Wayne Gretzky. I'm not going to repeat it again, but he was very nice. So, Agile Monk says, hey, I know the Utah Hockey Club. Danny Gable says, I'm not a licensed RPG psychiatrist. I keep my diagnosis to myself. All right. Got a couple more tips as a player to how to make your game master's life easier. How to cut them a break. How about understanding what your character can do? I mean, this is a big one. And it's not necessarily play your character off of the character sheet. That's not what I mean. Like you'll see a lot of modern players when they're faced with a challenge in the game, first thing they start doing is looking at their character sheet as if the answer lies there. And it's like, no, your answer lies here. By way of the character sheet. So, like Call of Cthulhu as an example. Okay, so how will I approach learning this information? Okay, so I could talk to somebody. Well, if I got to talk to somebody and I have to convince them to give me this information, I know I've got 3 ways going about doing that. I can charm them, I can fast talk them, or I can try to intimidate them. Which way do I think is going to work best with this person, with this NPC? Okay, I've decided on charming them. There you go. There's charm. I've got 45%. Cool. I'm good to go. Right? That's how it should work. It shouldn't be, okay, I need to get some information out of this person. It's like you're the game master. You just start rocking back and forth like, okay, all right, come on. So that's what I'm talking about. Just like we were talking about as a player being part of the group at the table, plus being part of the group in the game world. So if you are the cleric, you know your role is mainly to support the other characters by buffing them or healing them, getting rid of undead, things like that. That's what your character does. That is their role. Now, that doesn't mean that's all they can do. But as a player, it helps a lot if you know what your character does. Just understand your character sheet. Not necessarily find all the answers to what's going on. Oh, well, you guys are in the cavern and you're going through this cave and it's a really tight squeeze. And all of a sudden, oh, you hear in the distance. Oh, the cave's, there's a cave in. Like, the answer is going to be there on the character sheet. I don't get it. I have one last one, but first we'll see what we've got here in chat. I'm saying electric. I just got it right before. The Eclectic Goat says, I've run multiple games in a variety of genres and with anywhere from 4 to 12 people. It wasn't until the last year or so I started having issues. Are you having issues with the same people that you ran games for before, or are these new? Are these people new to your group? That I would be kind of curious about. Because remember, we have various different outside stimuli that is turning people on to role-playing games. Maybe not as much as when Critical Role was such a big, huge deal. I mean, it's still a big deal for people, but not like, oh my gosh. But you also have Baldur's Gate 3 that has drawn more people in. We've got other computer role-playing games, such as like Rogue Trader, as an example, that people are like, hey, that's kind of cool. And then they think, oh, well, I guess a tabletop role-playing game is the same thing. It's like, well, no, not really. Little Brent says, I seem to get smart guys playing fighters and, well, not so smart guys playing wizards. Yeah. Well, I think part of it also is going to depend on how many sessions they get under their belts. I'd say if you're experiencing the same problems a year into your group and you're getting together every week, every 2 weeks, and it's just the same thing all the time, then I would say you got a problem. But if you're experiencing some issues with some of the players, or maybe even all of the players at the game table, and you just started this group 2 months ago and it's your third session and things haven't changed, you still can mold those people into being better players, or at least maybe have them provide you with a little more common courtesy. See, that's one of the things too. I mean, some of the stuff is like, isn't it just common courtesy? Like, I mean, kind of goes back to the, like, if you went to, like, if I went to some person's house, even like as a kid, let's say I was in high school and I went to one of my friends' houses. Didn't matter how close a friend I was and how well I knew their parents and stuff. I didn't just open up their fridge and see what they had inside. That's like a given now. It's like, who the hell is that stranger in our fridge? See, now I don't have kids. I don't have to worry about that. But the Eclectic Goat says they played together for decades. Only in the last year, they've been pains in the ass. One was a friend who quit, and he's been sulky since. One just got married. One never gets to leave the house and is desperate to talk to other people, etc., 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 etc. I don't know. Maybe, I hate to say this, but maybe you're not as flexible as a game master anymore. That's a possibility. Now, I'm not going to float out the old adage where it's like, if you run across 3 assholes before noon, you're the asshole. And I'm not saying that at all, but it is very possible that, after all this time having these people as your group, maybe you're not as flexible with them as maybe you once were, and just little things kind of irritate you more. Little Britain says it tends to be a repeat issue over the long term, just one player or two. And of course, you can always try to take people off to the side and talk to them. I would recommend trying to make it look like you're discussing something about their character, as opposed to, hey, I'm taking you off to the woodshed. But let's see. The Eclectic Goat says it's little issues that snowball, and then the next session, people are expecting things to go wrong. So it becomes self-fulfilling. I think we need a break. Have you considered like a palate cleanser session? And what I mean by that is, if you were to, I don't know what game you might be running, but let's say as an example, you're running D&D. Run a one shot for a game system that is very, very easy to understand mechanically, right? So like something from Free League Publishing that's part of the Year Zero engine where, you know, got a pool of dice, they're 6-sided dice, you're rolling your dice, you need to roll 6s. Boom. That's it. That's all you really need to know. You're like, okay, so I have a strength of 2. I get to roll 2 6-sided dice. I need to get a 6. Boom. But you just roll a one shot or maybe an adventure that lasts a couple of sessions. And use that kind of as a palate cleanser to kind of, you know, shake things up a little bit. Little Britain says at some point I tried persuading one of them to GM just a session. Yeah, good luck with that. Lots of luck with that. So the Eclectic Goat says they've had medical issues that interfere with their ability to deal with distractions. So I get irritated easily when they go off the rails. Is that something that's taken place like in the last year or so? Because that could have something to do with it. You know, it's this kind of stuff's usually a combination of things. So it's like, oh, well, you know, here's where the open can of kerosene is. And oh, look, there's an open flame over here. It's like, oh, you know, separate. Those aren't necessarily terrible things. Put them together. Yeah, you got a problem. The Eclectic Goat says, should I run Invader Z or Invaders? Then yeah, run whatever you'd like. Let's see. I would say if your players are into Blade Runner, there's the boxed adventure set for Blade Runner. It's more than one session, though. That's probably like 3 sessions. But yeah, that would be something I would float out there. You know, ask your group, hey, you know, I kind of was kind of curious about this game, or I just really want to have some fun doing something a little bit different. Let's have Pirate Borg or something, right? Another easy mechanical system to jump into. It's OSR. It's pirates. It's undead. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there you can jump on into. Invaders is a game that's so easy to play you can learn it from scratch while on a raging drunk. Yeah, there you go. All good. Hey, mazes. We talked about mazes in the news section earlier. Anything with like the polymorph. Cobalt's ate the baby. That's a good one. That's super easy. But yeah, just floating some ideas out. All right, so I've got one last tip for players out there to make your Dungeon Master, Game Master's life easier, and that is enough with the backstory. I get it. You spent 3 hours coming up with something last night for your Tiefling Sorcerer. Okay, I understand. You invested a lot of time hanging out on ChatGPT. I get it. But I've got 5 players at my table. We're playing this adventure. I cannot squeeze in every aspect of your backstory that no one else gives a shit about at the table into the game. You can, as a game master, you can, try to play off their backstory or whatever, but this weird modern obsession that players get upset that their backstory is not being, just ingrained into the adventure going on is beyond me, because Nobody signed up to sit at the table and play this game for your backstory. And when you get upset that your backstory is not being included in the proceedings, no one else at the table cares, because their backstories aren't getting included into the proceedings either, probably. So they're already pissed off about that. I mean, I'm one of these people where we'll roll up characters, kind of have an idea, right? So if you've got like an occupation or class, whatever, okay, fine. Have an idea how you got to that point. I don't need to know everything that's happened in the 25 years of that character's life to this point. I don't even need to know why they're an adventurer or investigator or vampire or whatever, because we can always fill in those blanks as we play, as opposed to being like, okay, well, we're playing this Call of Cthulhu adventure that takes place in 1930, and in 1915, my character, I don't care. I do not care. But yes, as Kevin R. Smith points out, a one-paragraph backstory can be helpful. Yeah, of course it can, because it helps with role-playing your character a little bit. But you don't need to have, a bio all good to go and handing it over to your game master, dungeon master, and being like, okay, here you go. You get to incorporate this into whatever you've got planned. Like, oh, okay. Let's not do that. The Eclectic Goat says, I care about your character's personality, not their backstory. And if you had 20 years as a brilliant military tactician, why are you in my game at level 1? Yeah. But the best take on long backstories is that if your backstory is literally 35 pages, you're doing it for you, and you shouldn't expect the GM to use it at all. Agile Monk says, I'm hurting their characters' feelings. It's how I am. Just how I am. Well, sure, of course. So as the Eclectic Goat points out, in certain role-playing games like Cult, you have a dark secret, which is part of the character's development. Yes, and it adds, to your backstory. And that's where you kind of, because I've reviewed Cult, and you utilize that for role-playing and to kind of give your character its purpose and kind of fill in some of the blanks. But it's not where it's like, okay, well, here's 12 pages. It's just kind of a prompt, really. Pete's Racklet says, backstory, roll on the dungeon dozen. Okay, you rolled, you were kidnapped as a child mistakenly by thieves. You're now a thief. Congrats. Agile Monk says, but in 1915, I was doing such amazing things with the Wang Chung family import business of ancient Chinese secrets. Nice. But yeah, no, I'm not anti-backstory. I'm anti-backstory novella that needs to somehow be now squeezed into the campaign we're going to play. It's like, wow, this backstory is completely at odds with this person's backstory. Now what? Nah. So, all right. So it's goat or goatee? I'll say goatee. Ancient Chinese secret, eh? All right. So there you have it. Just a few common sense items that as a player sitting around a role-playing game table can make life easier on your dungeon master, your game master, And I think probably the most important, it's kind of a tie. And it's not the backstory, believe it or not. I think it's a tie between understand what your character does, kind of what their abilities are, what their role is. And if it's, it's a class, if it's a career, an occupation, whatever, kind of have an idea of what your character's role in the group is, tied with kind of have an idea how the game's mechanics work. The core mechanics, the thing that you're doing multiple times every session, have an idea what that is. So the 5th time game night, you need to make a combat roll. You don't ask your game master, is it this die? All right. So that is it for this time out. Wonder what we're going to do tomorrow night. I don't know. I almost had considered maybe taking a peek at the Chaosium 50th anniversary Call of Cthulhu slipcase set. But I really don't want to do first looks because we got away from that and we're staying away from that. And outside of the cover artwork, nothing's changed. So these aren't new additions. This isn't like Call of Cthulhu revamped or reforged or anything like that. So I think I will have to come up with a topic. Well, I don't know. Any suggestions out there that I can shoot down? Goaty asks, why don't players read the books anymore? Agile Monk points out, because many can't read. Yeah, sadly, it is kind of a sad statement that there are a lot of people who are, I mean, they can read, but their reading comprehension is trash. I think that's a major problem these days. Anyway, well, I'll come up with something. Anywho, like I said, that is it for this time out. If you're watching live, thank you very much. If you watch live and took part in chat, you get a tip of the cap because not only do you keep me company, you also keep each other company, especially when I'm going through the news or pontificating about a topic. But of course, I know a lot of folks out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Really do appreciate you taking time out to watch any of the videos here on the Gaming Gang channel. Now, of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. If you like the video, by all means, give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, be sure to indicate all notifications because it's supposed to inform you not only when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. It'll also let you know when I share other videos, such as my recent review of Cthulhu by Gaslight, Dust and Blood from Chaosium Inc. All right, everybody. Thank you very kindly for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. And as always, I certainly hope each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.